In the shadowed corridors of 19th-century European philosophy, few figures cast as long and controversial a shadow as Arthur Schopenhauer. Born in 1788 to a wealthy merchant family in Danzig, now Gdansk, Poland, Schopenhauer would grow to become one of the most influential and misunderstood philosophers of his time. Known for his profound pessimism and his unflinching examination of human suffering, Schopenhauer's perspectives on relationships contain hidden depths that continue to resonate with modern audiences, though perhaps not in the ways one might initially expect. Before we delve into Schopenhauer's insights on relationships, we must understand the man himself. Raised in a tumultuous household with a father who likely died by suicide, and a mother who was a popular novelist and salon hostess, with whom he had a famously strained relationship, Schopenhauer developed a worldview that was deeply skeptical of human happiness. His education took him through the finest institutions of Europe, where he was influenced by Kant's transcendental idealism and Eastern philosophical traditions, particularly Buddhism and Hinduism. This unusual combination of Western and Eastern thought led Schopenhauer to develop his magnum opus, The World as Will and Representation, published in 1818. In this groundbreaking work, he proposed that the world as we experience it is merely a representation created by our minds, while the true essence of reality is an underlying irrational force he called will, a blind, insatiable striving that perpetually creates suffering. Schopenhauer's understanding of human relationships must be viewed through this framework of will and representation. According to his philosophy, all humans are driven by this insatiable will that constantly generates new desires. The moment one desire is satisfied, another arises to take its place, trapping us in an endless cycle of wanting, momentary satisfaction, and renewed wanting, a cycle he believed was the root of all human suffering. Life swings like a pendulum, backward and forward between pain and boredom, Schopenhauer wrote, capturing the essence of his view on human existence. This pendulum swing becomes particularly evident in romantic relationships, where initial passion gives way to familiarity, and eventually, in many cases, to disillusionment. In relationships, the working of will manifests as what modern psychologists might call projection or idealization. We don't see others as they truly are, but rather as reflections of our own desires and needs. Both men and women fall into this trap, creating mental images of their partners that align with their deepest wishes rather than reality. Schopenhauer was particularly interested in romantic love, which he viewed not as the elevated spiritual connection portrayed by the romantics of his era, but as a clever trick played by nature to ensure reproduction. In his essay On Women, Schopenhauer wrote provocatively about gender relations, reflecting the deeply patriarchal society of his time. However, beneath the dated and often offensive language lies a more universal insight. Romantic love often involves a fundamental deception. According to Schopenhauer, when we fall in love, we are not responding to the actual person before us, but to an idealized image we've projected onto them. This projection is guided partly by our unconscious biological drives, what Schopenhauer called the genius of the species working through us, and partly by our personal psychological needs and fantasies. This philosophical insight explains why so many relationships begin with intense passion, but eventually lead to disappointment. The initial attraction is often based not on seeing the other person clearly, but on projecting our own unfulfilled desires onto them. When reality inevitably fails to match our projections, disillusionment follows. Schopenhauer observed this pattern, playing out repeatedly in the relationships around him. He noted how people would enter relationships with unrealistic expectations, only to become frustrated when their partners revealed themselves to be complex, flawed human beings rather than idealized figures. Marrying means to have one's rights and double one's duties, he famously quipped, highlighting the gap between romantic fantasies and the practical realities of partnership. The philosopher himself never married, choosing instead a life dedicated to philosophical contemplation, though he had several romantic relationships throughout his life. What makes this truth brutal is not any commentary on inherent gender differences, but the uncomfortable reality that much of our suffering in relationships comes from our own minds. We create fantasies about our partners that no real person could possibly fulfill, then blame them when they fail to live up to these impossible standards. While Schopenhauer's original writings contain views on gender that are products of his time and personal biases, the deeper philosophical insights transcend these limitations. The wisdom that many still ignore today isn't about women or men specifically. It's about the courage to see others as they truly are, not as we wish them. To be modern relationship psychology has confirmed many of Schopenhauer's insights, though framed in less pessimistic terms. Concepts like attachment theory, emotional intelligence, and mindfulness all address the same fundamental challenge: how to see beyond our projections and connect authentically with others. For example, attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby and expanded by Mary Ainsworth, explores how our early relationships with caregivers create templates for later romantic attachments. Those with anxious attachment styles may project needs for validation onto their partners, while those with avoidance styles may project threats to their independence, both creating distortions that prevent genuine connection. Similarly, the concept of emotional intelligence, popularized by psychologists like Daniel Goleman, emphasizes the importance of accurately perceiving and responding to emotions, both our own and others. This ability to see clearly, without the distortion of projection, is precisely what Schopenhauer identified as missing in many relationships. So, what would Schopenhauer prescribe as the antidote to this cycle of idealization and disappointment? While his philosophy is often characterized as deeply pessimistic, it also contains elements of profound wisdom and even liberation. For Schopenhauer, the path to reducing suffering lies in recognizing and, to some degree, transcending the demands of will. In relationships, this means developing awareness of our tendency to project and idealize, and making a conscious effort to see the other person as they truly are. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, Schopenhauer wrote. And if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free. This quote, often misinterpreted as advocating complete isolation, actually points to the importance of inner freedom, the ability to know one's own mind, and to distinguish between authentic desires and socially conditioned expectations. In relationships, this inner freedom allows us to see our partners more clearly, without the distorting lens of projection. It enables us to love not an idealized image, but a real, complex human being. This kind of love, based on clear seeing rather than fantasy, may lack the intoxicating quality of romantic projection, but it offers something more valuable: the possibility of genuine connection. In today's world of social media and online dating, Schopenhauer's insights on projection and idealization have taken on new relevance. Digital profiles and carefully curated images provide the perfect blank canvas for our projections, allowing us to fill in the gaps with our fantasies and desires. Dating apps, with their emphasis on surface-level attributes and quick judgments, can exacerbate our tendency to project rather than perceive. We swipe right or left, based not on genuine knowledge of another person, but on how well they seem to match our fantasies and preferences. Similarly, social media presents idealized versions of relationships that bear little resemblance to the complex, sometimes messy reality of human connection. These platforms can reinforce unrealistic expectations and deepen the disappointment when our own relationships fail to match these curated displays of supposed perfection. Schopenhauer would likely view these technological developments as new manifestations of the same fundamental problem: our difficulty in seeing reality clearly without the distortion of our desires and fears. While Schopenhauer is often remembered for his pessimism, his philosophy also contains a profound ethic of compassion. Recognizing that all beings are manifestations of the same underlying will and thus share in the same fundamental suffering, he advocated for compassion as the basis of ethics. In relationships, this compassionate turn offers a way beyond the cycle of projection and disappointment. When we recognize that our partners, like ourselves, are subject to the same forces of desire and suffering, we can develop greater empathy and patience for their struggles and limitations. This compassionate perspective allows us to move from idealization, seeing the other as perfect, or devaluation, seeing them as deeply flawed, to a more balanced view that acknowledges both strengths and weaknesses. It enables us to love not despite imperfections, but with full awareness of them. The real brutal truth that Schopenhauer offers is not about gender differences, but about the nature of human desire itself. It's about recognizing that much of our suffering in relationships stems from our own minds, from our projections, expectations, and demands. This truth is brutal because it places responsibility squarely on our shoulders. We cannot blame our partners for failing to match our fantasies. Instead, we must examine and adjust those fantasies themselves. We must develop the courage to see clearly and the wisdom to accept what we see. For those willing to look beyond provocative interpretations and engage with the deeper philosophical insights, Schopenhauer offers a profound invitation to self-reflection. His philosophy challenges us to examine our own desires, projections, and expectations, and to consider whether they're helping us form genuine connections or keeping us trapped in cycles of disappointment. The wisdom that many still ignore today is not about women or men specifically, but about the fundamental nature of human desire and perception. It's about the courage to see others as they truly are, not as we wish them to be. It's about recognizing our tendency to project our desires onto others and making a conscious effort to connect with the real person instead. This wisdom isn't comfortable or easy to apply. It requires constant vigilance against our mind's tendency to project and idealize. But for those brave enough to face this truth, it offers a path to more authentic and fulfilling relationships, regardless of gender. So the next time you find yourself disappointed in a relationship, consider Schopenhauer's insight. Are you seeing the real person before you or just a projection of your own desires? The answer might be uncomfortable, but acknowledging it could be the first step toward genuine connection. In a world increasingly dominated by illusion and idealization, perhaps Schopenhauer's brutal truth is exactly the medicine we need. Not to devalue relationships, but to transform them into something more authentic, grounded, and ultimately more fulfilling.